All right, welcome back to the Entrepreneur Nagel podcast,
Hello, what's up?
episode 31. Today we're going to talk about something a little different. In the past couple years, as we've gone on this entrepreneurial journey, I've enjoyed looking at what businesses in our area or Alaska as a whole are for sale. And that's opened a lot of ideas, none of which we've acted on, but
That's fair.
just the potential of owning businesses, especially in our area, is huge with tourism and a lot of the other industries.
A lot of them being super unique.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about briefly a couple businesses that I actually talked to the owners and we considered purchasing. And then we're actually going to look at my favorite place to look for businesses. You might be surprised by this, is actually Craigslist. Because the businesses you find on Craigslist are usually, in my opinion, more cash businesses and businesses that are more affordable. You're not looking at multi-million-dollar businesses with a ton of real estate. You're looking at a small business that someone started. Maybe they ran as a career or as a side hustle, and usually they're ready to get out. They're either moving or they're ready to retire. And so I feel like that kind of niche of business is the type that we'd be more interested in purchasing.
What was the other site that's like Craigslist that's only Alaska-based stuff? That somebody has
there's like
mentioned.
some Zillow kind of type sites that are just for businesses. And I've looked at those
Somebody
a few
was
times.
telling us about, like, instead of Craigslist, it was like Alaska List or something like that.
No, well, that's for like
Stuff.
guns.
I
And
was-
that Alaska List is for like stuff that Facebook won't let you list on the marketplace.
Sure.
Yeah.
Got it.
And
That's what it was.
That's
Never mind.
just like a
Okay.
classified.
Got it. But we normally do a question of the day.
Yeah.
Hold on, just 1 second. Okay, so we're going to pause for a second with the question of the day. My apologies, but we went ahead and listed a couple of the things. Well, we just talked about like the weird, instead of Alaska List, that's apparently for guns. I thought it was for business stuff too. I thought it was like Craigslist where you can list a bunch of like items for sale, like including businesses. You can like on Craigslist, you can even look for employment or list like if you have a job opening or something. Anyways, if you Craigslist is still a thing. It's also a great way to find items. Like Facebook Marketplace is great and can be great, and I still recommend that. But if you want to find stuff for like sale that can be unique, especially cars, I would check out Craigslist as well. Because that's a side note. We do check Craigslist often for used cars for Turo. If you didn't know, if you're new and listening to us for the first time, we this is Josiah and Kelly Nagel, and we run a couple businesses. One, we do e-commerce on Amazon, and then the other, we have a travel-based business out of Alaska that focuses exclusively on Alaskan travel, and we have rental cars that we rent out through Turo through that business. So last episode we talked a lot about how we price point a car, and we talked about how we figure out which cars are best for buying, like which we buy used cars with cash. And so we just talked though how we like decide what kind of cars we want to buy. We didn't really talk about how we buy the car with cash. So one of the great places we go to is Craigslist for used cars, because that's what we buy right now, used cars. Really not for new cars. I mean, I personally don't plan on putting a new car on Turo, probably ever. Mostly because that can be so expensive and the depreciation on the car itself can go down a lot. But let me see. What's the next thing? So, well, Josiah knows more about this, and he has to take care of a couple things real fast. But he's gonna, when he comes back, has to tell you about the couple of businesses we found on Craigslist that we thought about buying maybe a year ago or sometime within the past year and a half. I know we're just like Jack and Jill of all trade. We like to dibble dabble in a bunch of different things. And he'll have to tell you more because he was doing a lot of the research and he found them on Craigslist. And so that's, if you didn't notice, is what we're going to talk about today. How, like, just Craigslist sales for businesses, and that people are selling their businesses on Craigslist. Which is, can be, I mean, it's not the only place people sell their businesses, um, but the actual business itself, not just like the buildings or maybe old trucks that they had and whatnot, which is also a great place to look. I guess our video just went out. Oh, and now we look even better. That was weird. I'll have to have him mess with that. I don't know how that, is it the mode? Oh, well, maybe we'll just look weird the whole time. I don't know. It's a weird proportion now. No, we look like really wide. Oh, well. Sorry about that. Oh, the Wi-Fi is like down. I'm so sorry. We're trying to do this live and I'm trying to figure out. No, the Wi-Fi looks good. Yeah, the Wi-Fi looks good. I don't know. I don't know what happened. Sorry, now we look extra wide, but oh well. Anyway, so when Josiah gets back, he'll tell you about the business that we were thinking about buying. We've had thought about buying. But what I can talk to you about is a little side note for Turo for buying a used car. I think we've done a whole financial series. Excuse me. We've done a whole financial series through our podcast and on YouTube that you can find. I think we labeled them, if you're on the podcast, under season 2. So we had season 1, season 2, and now we're on season 3. If you're looking for like an old season, an old episode. And season 2 was all about finances. And we talked about how we run our finances personally, and then also how we incorporate that with how we run our businesses. But we mostly focus on the personal side. But we talked about how we bought used cars with cash, and that's how we've always done it. Well, I guess Josiah talked about the one time he did buy a car with a loan, and then how we'll never go back to that. So you can go check that out. I'm not sure exactly which episode that is, but on YouTube, we actually pulled out just a portion on how we bought used cars with cash, like how we actually get cars cheaper because we just pay with cash for them. And then how do you, then you might be wondering, like, well, you can't guarantee, is it a good quality car? Is it like, what's potentially wrong with it? How do you know? Like, what do you check out? How do you do it? Do you have to go through a dealership? Do you which is, you don't have to do. You don't have to get a used car through a dealership. You can get a used car from a private party or even from a smaller sales lot. Most people probably, well, I'd say, I'm not sure about most people, but I'm sure many people are afraid to do that. But actually, we've gotten some great cars. We've only bought one used car from an actual dealership. The rest of them we've bought from either private party or we've bought from a small car lot. And they've all been great. We've never had problems with the car other than basic things like, maybe the battery naturally dies, but that's like later. It's not like because of the purchase. Like, we know what to look for or what not to look for. Or if you don't know what to look for, which we didn't the first few cars we were purchasing, we knew some basic things like, okay, you can look at the tires and tell if they're somewhat low, like if they're really bald. Or you can kind of like look at the inside, like, or when you're test driving, you're like, this sounds bad. But we've have since learned how to find cars, even just personally, like we could just purchase it right on the spot. But if we're really worried about it, or if it's a lot of money, maybe it's a $20,000 used car. Maybe it's like a $25,000 used car. It's not just a $5,000 used car, which is still a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. But it's a lot different of a quality of car. You might want to like look more in depth in using a mechanic that you trust, and you can pay for a like, I've heard every place calls it a little bit different, but it's basically like an inspection check, but not just a state inspection. I mean, I'm sure you could do that too, but uh it's an inspection of like the entire car. They typically do like, I don't know, they check everything. They check like the engine, they'll check the tires, they'll check all the stuff, and you tell them, "Hey, this isn't my car. I'm looking into purchasing this vehicle." And they'll do a checkpoint. They'll check everything out on the vehicle for you and tell you like what's looking bad, what needs to be fixed immediately, what needs like, well, it could use this or it hasn't had this done. You could consider doing that. What's one of the one? Which car did we take in? Can't remember which car we took in, but they did a really great check. And really, the only problems with it were the shocks hadn't been changed out at, I don't know, 70, whatever the minimum was for that car, 75,000 miles, 100,000 miles, something like that. And it had already been like another 25,000 miles past that point, which, and you can talk to the mechanic about it. Is that actually dangerous? Like, is it to the point where like, your car's going to like fall apart? Or is it just more like your ride won't be as comfortable because it'll just be more bouncy, like, which can be rough. But maybe it's the type of car you want. You're like, hey, this is just getting me point A to point B in the city. I don't need it to run highway miles. I don't need XYZ. That's what some of those checks can do when you buy a car, even from Craigslist. Like you can get a private party and work it out with that person. Like, hey, I'd like to go get this car checked out at whatever location, this mechanic, like tomorrow, like, hey, I'm interested in your car, but we normally do like a whatever the inspection thing is called from that mechanic. And then we take it there. If you don't mind, we're going to take it there, just check it out. We pay for it, whatnot. It's typically like 100 to 150 bucks. Which like, that's again, not cheap. But if you're putting $5,000 down, $20,000 down on a used car, like buying it in cash, that's going to save you potentially because you might not know fully the whole engine very well. Like, I don't know all the engine components and I don't know what's been done or not done to the vehicle, which most people don't because it's not their vehicle. And you could take it in and get it checked, and they'll tell you, like, hey, the oil, yeah, they say they've changed it, but like it's looking bad. Like it looks like they've never changed it or something like that. So, um, so you can check out ways to buy that vehicle, um, by using people you trust in the community or an actual mechanic you pay for and use. But we would highly recommend that because it saves you a bunch of money. Okay. Well, when Josiah gets back, he'll tell you about the business we thought about buying, or we might have to just do a whole nother episode. But today we were going to talk about Craigslist businesses that are listed for sale, and like we were just going to analyze them, talk about like pros and cons to maybe not just the business, but like what they're selling it for. How do you analyze that? How do you purchase um how do you purchase a vehicle, a business on Craigslist, and if it would be a good deal? Let me check one just like
We muted? We live? I think we're live still. Okay, so sorry about that. I'm not sure what Kelly was talking about. But we'll get back to looking at some businesses here. We looked at purchasing two in the past. One was a moon bounce company, renting bounce houses, and the purchase of that business would have primarily been the materials and a bit of his business plan. He had a slight website, a few other things like that. So the big thing with that one is very seasonal, mostly a summer thing here in Alaska. Some indoor in the winter, and then the other part that primarily we didn't like as much was it's a heavy weekend business. Most people renting businesses are going to be or renting bounce houses are going to be looking for them for events on the weekend. And maybe we'll do another episode in the future and we dive in a little deeper into that business. The other business was a bush delivery service business, basically a hired shopper of sorts for people out in the bush of Alaska. So they'd contact this gentleman's business and he would go around in Anchorage and find the specific, usually grocery related items that they needed. And he'd purchase them and then he would deliver them to some sort of shipping company in town that would ship it to them. And so he'd primarily be going to like Costco and Walmart, and he had a lot of repeat customers. It seemed like a pretty well set up business as far as the customer base, and that's probably one we'll talk about more in the future as well, and why we ultimately decided not to pursue that. But there are some advantages to buying a pre-set up business, and both of those that I specifically talked about, the owners were either looking to retire or looking to move out of state. And so they couldn't really take those businesses with them, or they were kind of done working. And so I think that's one really important thing to look at is why is the owner of the business trying to get out of the business, right? Is it because it's failed or it's not what they thought, or is it maybe a more innocent reason they're moving or just ready to retire? But the advantages to buying a pre-setup business is someone's done a lot of the legwork in setting up systems and processes and finding customers and finding products and in analyzing the supply and demand in the area. And so if you get the right system, you're going to have to put a lot more money up front, but you can find yourself in a more lucrative from the beginning setup with a little less work involved perhaps on your part. And I think there's probably some correlations there to purchasing a franchise. A lot of restaurant chains are franchise, and many of them there's going to be a real heavy investment required in order to get into it. But the perks of what you're getting from that is a lot of the systems and the brand recognition and the supply chain of that specific brand. So let's hop on Craigslist and see what we see. There we go. All right. So for those of you listening on the podcast, I'll do my best to explain what we're looking at. I like to go to Craigslist for sale in our area and then the business filter. And a lot of the stuff you're going to see in here is more business materials, business related equipment. A lot of restaurant equipment usually pops up, or Connexes, things like that. We've got some ultrasonic dental equipment, some Connexes. So let's look at this. The first business that pops up recently listed, coffee shop for $1. Um, Not $1, but it says coffee shop for sale with lots of newer equipment and outstanding location, and then it has their phone number for an appointment, and it kind of gives the general area. So there's a lot of coffee shops in Anchorage or this part of I think Alaska in general, and a lot of them are kind of sheds on the side of the road, drive-through system, and they've got a couple high class espresso machines and all the fixings, and you get a window on each side of the shed, and coffee is really popular. So if you come to Anchorage, you're gonna find a coffee shack, coffee shop like that on every maybe third corner or something like that. Really popular, and that's a business we've actually thought about maybe someday in the future, just because it seems kind of interesting and kind of fun. This one, he doesn't really give much information, so we'll move on to the next, which also is a coffee shop, and this one's kind of cool. Sometimes there's a lot of connections between Alaska and Hawaii. I think because they're both islands, right? Alaska is not an island. Some people think it's an island, but both states are a little more isolated from the other 48 states, and so there's connections and similarities. A lot of Alaskans like to go visit Hawaii in the summer or the winter rather, get away from the cold, enjoy a little beach time. From time to time, I do see Hawaiian businesses pop up here. There must be a little interest for Alaskans to own businesses in Hawaii, and we've thought about maybe doing something like that in the future. That'd be kind of cool. So this is a coffee shop in Hawaii. They're looking to sell their cafe because they're moving to the mainland. So that's the reason they're looking to sell, because they're moving to a different location. Can't take the coffee shop with them. I think that's one of the most important things to look into right away is why are they selling? And then it describes what kind of brands, what kind of equipment, what kind of customer base they have. They've been open since June 2021, had exceeded their sales forecast, profitable start to 2022, and forecasting a profit as a whole for this year with lots of room for growth. So, and then they have a pretty detailed explanation of what equipment comes with it. And they have a website. So a couple things that if I was interested in this one, which I don't know, maybe $135,000 for this coffee shop. I'm guessing it probably doesn't come with real estate, but it comes with a lease and whatever else comes with that building. Comes with all this equipment, comes with their business brand. I would look into their social media accounts. They link it here. Their website, they link it here. And then if we were interested, I would give them a call or an email and ask them a little bit more about it. And I think the big thing to look into is the numbers of what they're doing. They say they're profitable. I don't know what an average profitability for a coffee shop is, but restaurants in general have a pretty low profit margin. I would guess coffee is probably a lot higher when it comes to profit margin.
Probably a lot higher.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, depending on what kind of coffee. But I'm assuming.
Sure. But yeah, so that's the coffee shop in Hawaii, and that would be kind of cool. Looking through the
That's cute.
pictures, it's got some cool art and style, kind of like a organic coffee shop vibe. Happy Heart Kona Artsy Organic Cafe. So maybe we'll buy that. So we have business ties in Hawaii, and
Fun.
we need to make business trips to Hawaii often. And this one is where is this one located?
It
Oh,
says
it's on Big Island.
okay.
I don't know the islands good enough. It says this shop is on Big Island and they're moving back to the mainland. I don't know what do you think they mean by moving back to the mainland? Are they moving to Oahu or to the lower
No,
48?
I think the lower 48. That's
Okay.
typically what that means.
So they're getting out of Hawaii.
That's Hawaii. That's Hawaii speak for lower 48. Alaskan speak
They say
for
mainland.
That's Alaskan speak for lower 48.
Okay. Okay.
For everybody else in every other 48 state, you would say in the United States, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And I guess one other thing that I just noticed in their write-up is if you're buying a business that has ties to a specific location, like this one or like the previous coffee shack that we looked at, although those coffee shop shed kind of setups here in Alaska are pretty movable, and you usually like lease a little bit of land on someone's property and you can move the entire structure. This would be it would a big part of the business you're buying is that the lease set up with that specific location. But they describe why the location they're in is really good. They've got lots of drive-by traffic as it's along a major highway, and there's a gelato shop right next door. Gelato and
Yum.
coffee do go pretty well together, so
Yum.
that seems like a pretty good symbiotic relationship. Look at that. I'm
So
a biologist.
what was the other coffee shop? Was it in Anchorage?
It was in Wasilla,
Okay,
and they
great,
didn't
Wasilla.
really say anything about it.
Okay.
They just kind of had a
so
phone number.
I'm curious as to I had chatted for a little bit about buying used cars on Craigslist and just like how we recommend using Craigslist, that we check it. We can check it often for at least used cars. But I mean, you have to be anything online, right, that you buy, you just have to be aware that there are scams. I'm not saying this one is a scam, but since it is in another location, two things. It could be a scam. I can't deny that, but I think if you contact or somehow communicate with the person, maybe you can come to find out like it is not. You can easily pick that up if they're not asking for you for a down payment or some other sketchy thing that doesn't make any sense at all. But why would they advertise an Alaskan shop in Hawaii?
Yeah. I touched on that briefly, and if you're listening or watching, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. But my thoughts are there's a lot of connections between Alaska and Hawaii with how there's some similarities in the isolation from the lower 48. And there's a lot of Alaskans specifically that like to visit Hawaii.
Or
So
snowbird.
Yeah, or some snowbirds. I've met a few people that actually spend about 6 months of the year in Hawaii and then spend the summers here in Alaska. That sounds like a pretty sweet setup.
That sounds
and
horrible.
maybe we'll try that out someday. And it would help if we had a business in each state, a summer-based business in Alaska, like maybe a travel business, and then a winter-based business in Hawaii, or something that's year-round that we could step away from and just be there for a few months, like, I don't know, a coffee shop. So I think I'd be curious to see how many Alaskans have some sort of business ties in Hawaii.
Right.
And I think it would be
even just
a higher percentage than Alaskans having businesses in other states.
I've actually worked with there's a kayak. She runs a kayak excursion out of a couple places in Alaska, specifically in the Resurrection Bay area, which is Seward, just south of Anchorage. And she also runs and she tracks the whales and stuff in the summer. And she'll go to Hawaii or a foreign country like Thailand or something and run a similar kayak excursion there, which is kind of, I mean, not literally the same, but it's a little bit different because, I mean, same business base. So, but she'll do that in the winters naturally because it's warmer there and that's when you can kayak.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. That's an interesting point about the seasonality of businesses in Alaska compared to a lot of other states. And there are a lot of fishermen do similar
Yes.
things. A lot of construction people do similar things, just because of how those industries, the demand for those industries varies a lot through the year. There's
Especially
a big peak in
construction.
the summer specifically for a bunch of those, but not much in the winter at all. Here's another one I'll touch on real quick. Is automotive repair shop inventory. So this is something that I've listings like this that I've looked into in the past to resell. It's probably a business that is closing down. They don't really say the history of it, but they've got a lot of old stock, potentially parts that are harder to find, or discontinued models for older vehicles. And he outlines all the different car parts and also some repair manuals and things like that. If I knew more about cars, maybe this would be a good buy to flip each of the parts individually. And maybe some of these are just old parts that are kind of dead stock that would take forever to sell. But that's one angle you can look into is liquidation of businesses, buying the inventory they have to resell. You can get stuff pennies on the dollar if you do it that way. Next one, you mentioned scams. Let's see what this one is. Here's the title. I want you to think if this sounds scammy at all. It says, "Be your own boss dash network marketing."
And the image is some sort of stock photo that has a notepad that says "Start my own business?" ? And it has checkbox for yes or no, and it's of course checkbox yes and circled.
Right. Okay. So let's click on it, and we'll. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but we'll just read some selections. Start your own business with proven products in the health industry. The company has been around for over 20 years. Have products that receive glowing reviews that produce significant results. I show you the exact steps to get customers and a downline with all messaging, videos, and scripts. It's a simple system anyone can follow. Okay, let's skip over that. Let's see what he promises we can get monetarily. Blah, blah, blah. He describes the kind of person that, oh, here we go. Okay, this is good to consider. This job is perfect if you are more than one of the following. And I'm going to guess here that he's going to describe pretty much everybody. You're supposed to be more than one of the following. Okay. You could be an extrovert that doesn't mind sales and talking to people, or you could be an introvert that has an iPhone and or laptop and doesn't really want to talk on the phone. Okay. So that right there describes everybody. Okay. Next, someone into fitness and healthy living. Okay. Someone that could lose a few pounds. That's a weird qualifier for being able to run this business.
Right. But both of those that describes everyone, right? If you're not into fitness and healthy living, you might need to lose a few pounds.
Oh, good point.
Because you're not into fitness and healthy living.
Yeah. Okay. And then someone familiar with network marketing, which can be sometimes a little scammy. I'm not saying all network marketing
what's the word familiar, right? Like,
yeah,
do you know what network marketing is?
I've heard of network marketing. And the last one here, excited about a binary compensation plan. Yes, I am excited about money. So I meet a couple of these.
Oh my goodness.
So what do you need to do? You gotta
obtaining this info is free. And then you literally have nothing to lose if you want to build your own business. If you end up not liking the opportunity, no harm. I just appreciate looking, and there be 100% no pressure.
All right, and here's what I was looking for.
Obtaining this info is free, but what about after obtaining the info?
Yeah,
when you
he's
sign
probably
up for the info?
gonna try to sell you some sort of beginner sales packet. But whether here's some numbers. He says, we can jump on a call to see how fast or slow you'd like to build. I'd like to build fast. And whether that means 500 a month or 5,000 a month. Ooh,
Yeah.
there's some flashy numbers there. So
Right.
I think the one big takeaway, and I've seen a lot of listings like this type specifically on Craigslist. I think the big takeaway is he doesn't say what the business is. He doesn't say specifically what the products are.
Doesn't even say
He
the
throws
company he
out
works for.
health industry, and then he makes a couple references to losing weight. So I'm gonna guess that this is something in the diet niche, the pills that make you skinny niche,
Right.
which sometimes
Or
those can be a
workout
little
plans.
fish oily to
Yeah, but
begin
it's
with.
kind of sketchy when people say they don't list the company. I've seen that on Instagram too, where they're
Mhm.
talking about, hey, and they put like a bunch of stuff and like, look, it's comparable to this specific company or industry. And then you're like, well, why do I have to contact you just to get the company name? Like that doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Familiar with pyramids?
Are you familiar with
Yeah,
pyramids?
when it's a reputable company that's been around for 20 years, but you're not willing to say the name of it,
Why?
that makes me question what this company actually is. And I would guess this is probably a company, maybe like Amway or uh, one of those where you end up being incentivized to sign up salespeople under you. And it's more lucrative to sign up salespeople under you than it is to actually sell the product. And when
Which is
you sign
sketchy.
up as a salesperson, it's not like you're getting a job or you're becoming a salesperson or something like that. In order to become a salesperson, you have to drop a bunch of money to buy a beginner kit or something. And I don't like that kind of pay to play kind of deal when you're basically being treated as an employee in some way.
Sure.
So
I think there are all right network marketing and MLMs out there that are reputable and good and not pyramid schemes. But you just need to like be aware of the sketchy scammy ones.
absolutely. So back to regular Craigslist, there's quite a few industrial type equipment materials along here. There's some restaurant dishwashers. There's some big dog espresso machines, $2 to $3 grand. So if you're looking for industrial type equipment, this is a good place to look. Or maybe if you're looking to start if we were looking to start a coffee shack from scratch, I'd probably start on this page to look for some
Sure.
equipment for it.
Or buildings potentially, like a lot of places up here in Alaska, they're like literally like a shack. We're not joking. They're basically a shed, maybe a trailer, that was converted into like somewhat more of a permanent structure, kind of. But it's just they're leasing a part of a parking lot, and then you drive. They're just drive up. You don't walk up. You just drive up, drive away, get your coffee, and then you end up. Anyways, so you could look for structures. I think we've found a few on Craigslist that they were selling like the
you're
structure.
is basically like a food truck, but not so much mobile.
Right.
Here's another one that is a franchise that's maybe a little questionable. Some of these type franchises, I think can be questionable. So let's look at it real quick. Children and Elderly Visitation Franchise, $7,500. But then at the bottom line, they say total initial investment under 35 grand. They do put the website, and they kind of describe what's going on. So that's better than the last one. And yeah, this could be something that's potential worth exploring more. I'm not going to look into it right now, but just clicked on their website and it looks
Stock photo-y.
It looks okay, other than they have 4 tabs across the top, which are home, franchising, franchise packets, and contact us. So, what does this business do besides sell franchises? That's my first question. Because right in your face is buy our franchise. So
Right. And
is
all
that their product?
and all their photos look pretty stock photo-y, like they could
They
come from
do.
anywhere.
Yeah. Another
Which
thing I
stock
like
photos
to.
aren't bad. You just have to be aware that if you use too many stock photos, it just makes your business or your website not look legitimate.
Yeah. So maybe this is something legitimate. I don't know. I'd be cautious. I clicked contact us down at the bottom of the page, and it comes to we couldn't find the page you're looking for. So their website isn't totally built out, and it kind of looks like their main product is selling franchises to people,
Right.
not visiting children and elderly or whatever whatever that is. Okay, let's go on to a big dog business that is an interesting one. 1.5 mil for a RV park and campground.
Nice.
Perfect location on the corner of the Parks and Glen Highway on Matanuska Lake. Hospitals across from us. Kitchen, hotel rooms, propane. They have U-Haul trucks, full and partial RV hookups, boat rentals, fishing, and then it says right there their website and 1.5 million. So you're getting a lot with this. Probably, the property itself is probably a good portion of the business's value,
Right.
and then you also got some hotel structures
Lodge.
in
Right.
addition to just the gravel lots for RV hookups. That'd be kind of a neat one. That would be an example of a seasonal summer business, and then you could go run your coffee shop in Hawaii during the winter. Because a lot of these campgrounds open
Right.
up usually Memorial Day weekend,
hmm
which is coming up here the end of May, and then they run until
Labor
sometimes into
Day.
September,
Labor Day,
Labor Day.
typically.
So that's kind of a cool one, and I've seen a few like this, or maybe actually no, I've seen this campground for sale for a while. It's 1.5 million. There's probably not too many people looking to buy a campground for
I
that
think
much.
we've heard too, and we've talked to people that have sold or know about sales consistently when selling a business. It can take like 6 months to a year on average. So it's not a quick turnaround.
hmm
Probably leaning more towards the year mark
Especially when
on
you're talking about 1.5 mil. Now maybe
exactly.
this 135 grand coffee shop might be a little quicker, or something that's a
Right.
little bit more of a you're going to get a quicker recoupment of your investment. Like, how long would it take to make 135 grand back with a coffee shop?
Right.
I would hope just a couple years.
Now,
Maybe
again,
maybe if it's a really sick coffee shop, you can make 135 grand in 1 year. I don't know.
did
I'd
you
guess
tell
2 to 3
people
years.
how you can kind of tell the difference? Here's some quick clues on how to tell the difference between a scam on Craigslist or online. Maybe like Facebook Marketplace being another good one.
Yeah.
And then how to like just some quick.
Big thing is you want to look for specifics. If they're selling a business and they won't tell you the name or the exact product, or give you an idea of the product they're selling, that's questionable. If they don't have any pictures of the business, like what are they trying to hide? And sometimes there are legitimate reasons. Like, I've seen pizza shops in town for sale, and they kind of describe the pizza shop, and I can tell it's legit, but they don't want to tell their customer base that they're selling the shop. They
Right.
want it to be a clean transition from one owner to the other. They maybe don't even want people to know that it's exchanged hands, because that could be detrimental to the customer base in some cases.
Right. That
But
actually can be detrimental to the sale of the
um,
business from
if
happening.
they're too vague about the business and maybe a little too optimistic about the value or the potential revenue from that business, you gotta be a little careful. Here's one that I've seen a bunch that's been on Craigslist for a long time, probably 2 years. This guy is not able to sell it. And I've looked into this one a little closer a few times. Inventory, domain name, website, and business of, and this is the domain name, 2000gifts.com. So this is a web-based e-commerce store, basically. And so he's selling the URL and what's left of the inventory, asking.
And if you're listening, the photos on here don't look like it's a newly updated website.
Yeah. So what interested me about this is it's in the e-commerce space, and it comes with inventory. and a built out URL, and he describes how popular they are. So it's a business that's been in 22 years. That's how old this business is. So that's promising. You're getting the domain name with it and the remaining inventory and business assets. And here's the part where they kind of lost me. The business is greeting cards, posters, gifts, and art. So
Right.
those to me sound like slower sale items. And then you look and it's legitimate because he gives pictures of the actual inventory, and it's like
Classic, like
older
old
style art and a bunch
cards,
of cards, like Hallmark greeting cards, but
but that they're
like
old.
classic
Right.
or more classic type art. That's not a business I want to get into. And other like
Right.
little niche decorative things, like there's some Native American type poster art. There's
Right.
some older looking floral art, some classic looking
Magnets.
patriotic magnets, and a
A lot of
bunch more
postcards,
postcards.
cards, greeting
So
cards. Right.
one thing I'm noticing is this is a 22-year-old business, and maybe it was popping 22 years ago. Probably not so much now,
Mhm.
but he gives the domain name. He's pretty upfront about it all. And one of the listings, he actually puts his personal address there. Ooh, I would not have done that. One of the listings I read for this one, he actually was upfront about how much revenue he's getting right now.
And I guess if it's been open for 22 years, it would make sense why it was called 2000 Gifts, because it was
Yeah,
opened in
yeah.
2000.
And you oh yeah. Huh, I didn't even think about that. If you go to the website itself, there's a lot of pictures and he tells like the whole story and he's got a long write up. But basically this used to be a brick and mortar store in one of the malls, and then he transitioned to going completely online in 2008. And I
Okay.
would guess, I don't know, maybe in 2008 this website was popping. But I would guess he hasn't had or hasn't spent a lot of time on this business in the last 5 to 10 years, probably. I don't know. Maybe there's something you could do with this to revamp it. Not for us. $4,200. So that's not a huge investment. It seems like a decent amount of inventory does come with it if that's your style.
Sure.
Okay, let's see what time it is. I think we've got time for maybe one more to take a look at. We've got one here. Urban Greens. Is that a dispensary? A lot of
It says
dispensaries in
soups
Anchorage.
and salads,
No,
or subs
it's
and
a
salads.
restaurant. Okay, we can look at a restaurant or a seafood processing plant.
Oh, seafood processing plant.
Okay, so the restaurant is a subs and salad place for 245 grand. I haven't heard of it. Urban Greens. It looks like a modern style, but we'll take a look at a turnkey seafood processing plant. This is another big one. 1.6 mil.
It doesn't have any photos, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. It just doesn't have photos.
Yeah. So it's a turnkey seafood processing plant. Seafood is a really big industry in Alaska, and there's a lot of commercial fishers. There's a lot of processing plants where they process those fish, and just a lot of potential in that industry. So this would be probably if you're looking to get into the processing space, or you already have a business in the processing space and want to expand, this would probably be a great opportunity. Um,
It
You'd probably want to know a lot about this industry before buying something like this. But we've got a small scale seafood processing company that closed down last winter. This is in Kodiak. So not on the mainland, it's on an island. You can walk in and start processing. 7,000 square foot building. So these are some of the specifics that kind of let you know that, okay, this seems legitimate. 7,000 square foot building, bunch of processing equipment, 1,000-pound fish smoker, So they're not just filleting fish here, they're actually processing and smoking and packaging a finished product. They've got an ice machine, a blast freezer. They're also freezing fish here, a holding freezer, walk-in fridge, forklift, flatbed truck and trailer, packing inventory, and more. Serious inquiries only. And it does give the address, so you could look this one up and maybe find out more about it. I'd imagine most seafood processing plants don't have websites. They're not connecting directly with customers. What they're doing is they're buying fish in bulk from commercial fishermen right off the boat. Then they process those fish in some way, whether it's just fillet and freeze or smoke and
Right.
can or smoke and vacuum pack. And then they, I believe, would sell that in bulk to perhaps other companies that retail it throughout the US or to different shops in town. There's a lot of
Or restaurants, I'm sure too.
yeah, perhaps restaurants, perhaps like some grocery stores too. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, $1.6 million for a seafood processing plant, and this would be another example of a more seasonal business, so that you could go run your coffee shack
Priorities in Hawaii.
in Hawaii.
Oh my goodness.
So with that was kind of fun.
Did you tell them about how we actually did get a job off of Craigslist one time?
That's a good way to finish this. Yeah, that's a fun story. After we graduated college, and I commissioned with the U.S. Army, the Army said, "All right, see you in a few months. You're on your own." And so we were kind of
That's very
stuck in this
actually
weird
true.
situation where I had a solid full-time job coming, but it
It was
wasn't
4 months away.
yeah, I had to wait 4 months for it. So what do you do for 4 months?
Now, mind you, he was on the like good end because he got some a class time closer to commissioning than many other people got. Many other
Yeah.
people had to wait 6+ months.
Yeah, I had classmates that had to wait 6, 8, maybe 10 months in some cases.
Right.
So that's an unfortunate part of the process that the Army does.
But not the
Anyway, so we
Navy.
had to
It's
find
interesting.
some kind of mediocre part-time jobs. Despite us both having engineering degrees, we found ourselves working at Panera Bread, which was an adventure.
As delivery drivers.
Not a great time, but I do appreciate having a small bit of experience in the food service industry. I have a little bit of understanding how that works and how working in that industry
and being a delivery driver, how that operates.
Like that.
Yeah.
With that experience, I do not have a desire to ever really have a food service business. And I say that
Sure.
with a caveat. I feel that a coffee shop is different. Their primary product is coffee. That's different than sandwiches or something like that. Coffee, I don't know. It seems different
It's
in my
just
mind.
different.
Maybe it's not. The other job we did was a door-to-door sales job that I found on Craigslist. It looked really sketchy.
I was
I'd
very
say
skeptical.
even sketchier than that network marketing one that we looked at a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
It just
I was like, what are you getting us into?
So here's and when I described the job, after it was a legitimate job and we made some pretty decent money hourly, considering the hours we put in. And in hindsight, we probably would have been better off doing that full time as opposed to kind of doing 2 part-time jobs. The Panera didn't pay super well. This other one ended up paying better, but it didn't. It was more of a sales type job where you're not guaranteed.
It was a sales job, which can be difficult, like especially when you only have a few months and it's hot in the
So
summer.
here's what it was. This was circa 2016, and I believe stemming from some green type policies from the Obama administration. There were a lot of green energy incentives floating around, free money from the government.
Sure.
And some of those trickled into the electric companies. and the electric companies were offering rebates for customers that installed more efficient things in their house in order to reduce the demand for electricity.
And the two ways that a customer could get it is that the customer would have to do a bunch of like legwork and paperwork to get this said rebate, but also rebate being like they would just have to pay for all these products and do all these things.
So they could hire a contractor, get a
Right.
bunch of work done, pay for it, and then get a rebate check from the electric company that the electric company is ultimately getting from the government.
Right. Or there were a lot of people like those in construction who are building homes or flipping homes and whatnot, that I would probably go with building homes, that were setting up like already a house and they were setting it up in a green way. And so they would get like a rebate for doing that.
Yeah. Now there's a third angle there, and that's the company that we worked for. And I feel like it's
It was not the intention of the
maybe
original plan.
a loophole, and I think any government kind of handout is going to have loopholes like this, and we financially benefited from this one. Basically what we did is we went door to door offering people free stuff, and then they signed a document saying that the rebate would go directly to our company. And so they'd get free stuff up front, our company would get the rebate. And so part of it is we would do a little survey of their house, an assessment, looking at some of the energy efficient kind of stuff, and then our company would send them a report later, maybe
like
recommending
the hot water heater. We'd look at that, and we would look at like their AC unit.
Yeah, it would kind of recommend future projects that they could consider in order to make their house more energy efficient. And in doing so, and the free stuff we would give, we would usually switch out a bunch of incandescent light bulbs for LED. We'd give them do a little insulating of some of the pipes. We do
exposed pipes. We weren't opening walls.
yeah, just stuff around the water heaters. We'd show them a few tricks with the water heater. We'd usually install flow limiting stuff for your sinks, like aerators or different shower heads, and we do that all for free. And so it's
turn down your hot water heater by a few degrees.
Yeah,
in like reasonable ways. Which, speaking of, those are top things you should do for your house. Change your aerators out if you've bought a older home. They probably have never been changed. Those are really disgusting and bad. You should change those out more often. And turn down your hot water heater if it's like really too hot of a temperature, because you're spending way more money heating up water that like doesn't need to ever be at that degree.
So handyman tips from us from that the free light bulb job we had. To boil it down, we went door to door offering people free light bulbs. And
sure,
the look on your face is probably the average look on the face of everybody's door that we knocked on.
Well,
a lot of people were really skeptical.
No. But see, this is the thing, and this is how this business operates. This is why it's a loophole. What neighborhoods do you go to when you offer free stuff?
Yeah.
Do you go to the big mansions that have like acres in between each house?
No, those are the people that say this is a scam, right? Nothing's
They call
free.
the police. They call the police on you, and they're like, "Get out of our neighborhood. If you go to our neighbor, we will call the police some more." Like,
right.
So that's what you end up doing. You end up tracking down lower income or maybe smaller houses that maybe aren't low income, but lower middle class. And then somebody who would be like, well, sure, okay, I'll take your free stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, free stuff. Yeah, no strings attached. Sounds good. And probably the target customer that we had more success with was also renters. They didn't really care about the long-term energy efficiency of the house they lived in. They just like, oh yeah, we actually have some light bulbs that are out. You say you'll replace them right now for better LED ones. Yeah, LED ones are kind of expensive. And then the company that we worked for, they gave us like a tiered thing. We got commission based off of how many and what types of energy things we installed. And there was like a max, there was a maximum for how much money we'd make based off of, I think it was based off of what the energy company said. You had to potentially save them a certain number of kilowatt hours per year. And so we do like, there are a lot of tricks. Like the shower heads gave you a bunch, a little bit of pipe wrapping, gave you it was like super easy to do, give you a few points. The light bulbs were the big ones.
Well, and the other part was the funny enough thing, even within like the company's like tiered system, like once you've been doing it for a minute and you start calculating stuff, which we studied you studied computer engineering, but it's just a form of electrical engineering. So we studied electrical engineering and we're like tracking all these things. We're like, okay, some of this stuff doesn't actually do much, but whatever. I mean, it does. It does actually save you on electricity, but we were tracking, like we were math people. We're like, so if we did the highest tier, which you're thinking, well, you make the most money. But you take way more time to do some of those things. So we would track,
Yeah.
like, especially for certain style of houses, because a lot like more townhomes go to renters or like lower income, lower middle class. They were townhomes in the state we were in. I don't know what you call them up here in Anchorage. They call them a bunch of different things, right? But it was funny. We were like tracking somebody, they would be like, oh, you didn't try to do the higher level? We're like, no, we didn't. And like, it was because it would take too much, like literally too much time. And by that point, if you're only having to spend half hour, 45 minutes in one house, you could already hit another house within an hour.
Yeah,
So,
and I think if I remember correctly, the optimal situation was replacing, I think, 10 of a certain type of light bulb, 2 shower heads, and then these little like LED night lights. And then if you were just like a little short on one of those, do a little pipe wrapping.
well,
And that
pipe
was,
wrapping, or I would end up like you would also change like the hot water heater temperature,
yeah,
which
and
most people were at extreme levels. I will say that was a big one. Like it was even limited on how low we could put. Like, okay, there's a like sanitization level. Like I think it's like 125 or 135, something like that. The degree level in Fahrenheit of your hot water tank that it should be minimum at to sanitize. Like if you wanted to turn on the hottest level, it actually give you like a good shower or wash your dishes well or whatever. Most people had theirs at like, they didn't even know it, or like 165, 185, something insane, to the point where we couldn't even, like, we could only drop it, I think, by 10 degrees at max. And it was like, okay, we're going to drop it by 10 degrees, but you should, when we leave, like, we're not allowed to do it. You need to drop it some more because it's like way too high. Like, you're actually scalding. Oh, that's why I'm scalding myself when I turn on the shower.
And I think through that, by the end of the summer, we had a pretty good sales tactic. We did it together. Kelly would, once we got our foot in the door, Kelly would kind of like
Do the paperwork.
distract the person and do the paperwork so that I could run around and do the light bulbs. Yeah, nothing sketchy.
It was not sketchy. Okay.
It was quicker to change the light bulbs and stuff if they weren't watching me. And then
analyzing, and then you're sitting there conversing, like they want to converse with somebody, so it's like fine.
Yeah.
And I like converse with them. Where's your bill? Okay, we need this
Yeah,
number off the bill, which is true. Like all of it we needed.
Kelly would take care of the paperwork. I'd go do the
Right.
installing, and sometimes the people that were skeptical, we'd woo them, be like, "Listen, we're both electrical engineers. We know about light bulbs." And the average person is like, "Oh wow, hey, yeah, electrical engineers. They say we need these light bulbs."
Which is not why we were hired, which is funny. Actually, I don't even think the people that like the company that hired us knew what we studied. Well, funny, when we were working at Panera, somebody asked you, oh, okay, like you one day, they were like, so what are you doing with your life? Why are you here? And you were like, well, I studied computer engineering. They were like, why are you here? Like,
I'm an officer in the U.S. Army.
And then they were
decided to work at Panera Bread.
Why are you here? And it's like, this weird story.
Yeah, so probably to wrap things up, maybe the biggest takeaway we got from working that job is
sales skills.
Is a little bit of sales skills. And we had the most success when we could create a connection with the potential customer. Whether it was notice a bumper sticker on their car, or there were a few people that were definitely skeptical, and then we're like, hey, you're in the Army? I'm in the Army too. And then like they let their guard down and be like, oh, this can't be a scam. This guy's in the Army too. And that's the only way we got our foot in the door to do that stuff for them, because we had that we created that trust by noticing a potential connection. Or this is very much a big college town. We drop like, hey, I see your shirt has the name of the college. Like, yeah, we just graduated from there. Things like that, and kind of
Right.
yeah, sales tactics. You probably take a long class or read some books about them.
Also, really good at
we learned it on the street.
We learned at the street analyzing houses. Like once we got really great at doing a certain type of house, like townhouses, since they're basically all the same in a neighborhood, especially if they were commercialized and had a ton of them. We got really good at like, okay, we know we hit this neighborhood multiple times because you're not going to get everybody in one day, clearly. Then you start like, okay, the upstairs, definitely these townhouses have 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, which meant 2 shower heads. You see what I'm getting at? Like we just started
we
being able to
knew
analyze
a couple neighborhoods. We knew the layout of the house. We knew where the light bulbs were.
I could probably walk you through the map of a house.
We could do the whole shebang in like 15 minutes under optimal conditions, and we'd make like $150 for 15 minutes of work, something like that. It was pretty good if the conditions were right. But anyway, that's super off track, but that's related to Craigslist. I think we'll wrap it up here. That was I had fun looking at the Craigslist businesses. Maybe we'll do that again in the future.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the moon bounce one we almost bought. That one we were actually pretty close to buying. And
you were pretty close to buying.
Yeah, I was pretty close to buying. I wanted some moon bounces. Or bounce houses. I don't know the difference.
Sure.
And the Bush delivery one that I looked at as well. That's it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in, watching, listening, whatever you're doing. Like, comment, subscribe.
Find us on Instagram at jellybagel_AK.
And at baconbagel_AK.
Entrepreneur Angle Podcast, episode 31.
Yep.
We're out.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.